All right, guys, it is Skybird here, and I am hesitantly hyped. I guess that's going to be the trademark for the channel. But about some news that we got today, and I did not actually see it from LEGO themselves, nor did I see it from the other theme. Honestly, I couldn't tell you where I saw it, but I've just got something to reveal to you if you have not seen it already, because yes, in fact, we are getting LEGO Pokemon in 2026. I don't need to tell you that. It's on screen. How long is this theme, this license going to go for? I have no idea. How many sets? No clue. This is all the information that I have that you see on screen right here. But here's the thing. Why am I hesitant about it? Well, LEGO's not the first brick-based company to approach Pokemon with the idea of selling Pokemon buildable figures. If you guys have been a fan of my channel for any length of time, you will note that in the background of most of my videos for the past year now, I've had this little guy floating around. And this right here is a Scyther build as well as a Magnemite build that comes separately. That is from the brand Mega Construx, formerly Mega Bloks. Also, apparently now it's just called Mega. The rebranding does not instill a lot of confidence, but suffice to say, these builds are attractive to me for several reasons. Now, they made many Pokemon builds in this theme, and we're going to be taking a look at some of them here in a moment. But generally speaking, my focus, and just speaking for myself here, is the original wave of Pokemon, the first generation. Why? Because I'm a kid of the 90s. Of course, I'm nostalgic for that stuff. I'm not somebody who really goes out of my way to keep up with Pokemon or Pokemon news. I don't play Pokemon cards anymore. It's been about 10 years since I've even touched Pokemon cards, other than going through the few that I still have in my collection. But generally speaking, what I find most fascinating about these sets is that the set that I just showed you, that Scyther and that Magnemite, the Magnemite here actually is a separate product on its own. A small little product, maybe $5 or $6 when it first hit store shelves, and it was purchasable in one of these little Pokeballs right here. Kind of cute packaging. I really appreciate that. But the problem is that LEGO has not made any equivalent products to this in quite a long time. The last that I can think of has to be the Mixels sets, where you had a theme that was primarily devoted to relatively small sort of polybag adjacent sets, many of them. Before that, we had something like X-Pods in the mid-2000s, but outside of that, LEGO hasn't really done anything or even touched those types of products in a long time. Yes, they have polybags. Yes, they have, the collectible minifigure series, and, each theme might have little gimmick packs that come out for it. You have, Ninjago obviously has its little packs and things like that, generally speaking. So they have products, but they're not the driver of many of these themes. However, Pokemon is a theme that I think greatly benefits from this type of product because there are just so many, and it is heavily based on a sort of collector's mentality, right? The first generation of Pokemon is 151 characters, and of course, many of the people out there are going to want to get as many of those as they can. Now, there are a few ways that LEGO can still do this without offering up a bunch of small packages, right? You don't need to have 151 of these on store shelves, but obviously you can do box sets where you have multiple characters battling each other in the set. That makes sense. And of course, once again, Mega Construx also had something like this. So we're going to go ahead and go through some of these here, because this is why I say I'm hesitant. While I appreciate all of the specialized molds, and I'm usually a skeptic of specialized molds, but for something like Pokemon specifically, it makes a lot more sense. And LEGO has been producing some suspicious, let's say, specialized molds in the past couple of years that make me think maybe this has been going on in the background for a while. I'll get to why I speculate that here in a bit. Ultimately, I think Mega Construx was better geared towards this, and I have a lot of these sets in front of me we'll be showing you here as well, but you'll see many of them on screen here too. You can see that we kicked things off all the way back in the first series in 2017. I'm not going to go through all of these because there are actually a hell of a lot of them, and this is where a lot of the problems start to crop up, because in this first series and in the second series, people are already starting to notice that LEGO is starting to reproduce some of the Pokemon. Not necessarily in the Pokeballs yet, right? These were all fairly unique But after a while, you'll start to notice, oh, we've got another Pikachu showing up in here. And that's a little bizarre, especially when you come to understand that there were also box sets where Pikachu and other Pokemon might have shown up in again. It makes sense for a flagship character like Pikachu. Like, he is sort of the namesake, the poster child of Pokemon. So I get getting reproductions of him every once in a while. But again, Pikachu, like, you start to see Charmander again, and so on. And you start going through more and more of these, and you're seeing more reproduction show up. And this is still fairly early in its run. Remember, you've got 151 Pokemon just from Generation 1 to choose from. And obviously, there are other generations sprinkled in here as well. You've got Aron, you've got Plusle, you've got Sableye, you've got Larvitar, etc. So, like, they know that they've got plenty to choose from, but why go out of your way to reproduce the same ones over and over again? Even this early on, only 2 years in, you've got characters like Dratini and Ditto and things like that could have been produced by this point in time, and you're getting another Eevee, which again also showed up in a box set by this point as well. And also another Pokeball. So you're, again, 2019, and you've got these 6 here, all of which I believe at this point, except for maybe Jigglypuff, had shown up in other sets. So this is why I think they kind of did themselves a disservice. And people were calling them out on this even by 2018. They're like, hey, Mega Construx, we love what you're doing with the Pokemon sets, and obviously you're going to want to update them, right? Because, like, as the theme evolves, more pieces, more specialized parts are going to come out. So I totally get reproducing them once in a while to sort of update them with these new parts. Makes sense, absolutely. But to do it over and over, look, I mean, that's the 4th Pikachu we have in 3 years in just the Pokeballs alone, not to mention the box sets. At least one, because I had it, also came with Pikachu. So it's wild to me. And here you go again, 2020, you've got the starters. Once again, you got Pikachu, you got Eevee, now you got Cubone, which also appeared in another set, because I have that one in front of me right now, and it's not the one from this Pokeball. So, like, oh my god, again, Pikachu starters. What are you doing? What are you doing? I don't get it. I do get it. Like, again, it's much cheaper for them to just keep doing it this way, because you don't have to keep reproducing several of the parts. You already have them in your stock, right? And because you have them in your stock, you're going to want to get rid of any extras you might have. Sneasel already came in a box set by this point in time as well. And we can keep going. These are all just the Pokeballs you can see here. I will leave a link for this in the description if you are interested or curious in learning about any of these all-time favorites. Like, God, get out of here with this. Like, come on, But generally speaking, there are some really cool things to be seen here. But many Pokemon, especially from Generation 1, I think you are sort of obligated to finish out Generation 1 if you're going to do a Pokemon thing. At least one you're going to dedicate this much time into. It's different in a few ways for Lego, because, say, for example, Lego only produces box sets, right? In that regard, I cannot see them producing all 151 original Pokemon. Obviously, they're going to be fan favorites from other generations too. The people are going to be like, hey, why didn't you do this? Well, you can't please everybody when you're going after a product this all-encompassing. It's got 25 plus years of history at this point. So, like, you're not going to make everybody happy, but at the very least, you have a lot of material to work from. The second Dragonite to appear. Look at, like, 2017, you've already got all 4 of these in box sets that I believe were like $15, but don't quote me on that. It's been a few years. So why are these showing up in so many Pokeballs? I get. That's the other thing too, is it almost feels to me like Mega Construx or Mega Bloks or whatever they want to call themselves these days, Mattel owning them as their parent company, right? Didn't want to even consider that there is a second market, right? Because many people would be, obviously, if you're going to be creating a product like this, going to want to collect as many as they can, right? Makes sense. But sometimes you go to the store and they just don't have the one you want, but maybe they have another one that's desirable. You already have it, but hey, you get it because it's desirable, and you could trade it to somebody else for one that they have that you're missing, or you can sell it, of course, absolutely, right? So, like, I completely understand that that's a thing that exists, because it's the thing that exists in all fandoms, but it's like Mega Construx didn't even consider that. And it's wild to me. There are a lot of sets. Remember, I scrolled past so many. This is like the second time we get a Machop here. Umbreon and Espeon here appearing for at least the second time as well. I haven't looked through everything. Most of my collection stemmed from 2017 or G1 builds specifically. I didn't own all of them by any means, but I had a decent swath of them. After a while, I was just like, all right, I'm done. These are getting more expensive every year, and they're getting harder to find sometimes, and like, just not worth it. But that's just me, right? That's the choice I decided to make. Other people obviously could continue chasing these for a while. You've got Gengar in 2018, then another Gengar in 2019. Like, what are you doing, Lego? Sorry, not Lego. See, this is where the problems start to come in hand. So here's the thing. If Lego does Pokemon, as they're clearly implying they're going to do, I think they either, one, have to bring back pod type sets. I am actually somebody who's been proposing this even before we knew anything about Pokemon as well. Obviously, I've been hyping up my own idea for a Bionicle comeback, doing board games, and that has pods in it. So like, yeah, I'm biased, absolutely. But even ignoring that for a moment, if we do something like Pokemon, yeah, pods could absolutely sell reasonably well. I think they would come at a premium, unfortunately, which kind of sucks, right? Because if you've got 150 Pokemon and each of these pods cost, say, $10 a piece, you're out a hell of a lot of money, right? If every single one appears in a pod. And also that means a lot of logistics for Lego, so I don't imagine that happening, right? But at least a few pods in a wave to give you some desirable sets, or sets that just don't make sense to have in boxes or in packages, in teams, in battles, in etc., right? And then you can have something that's a set with, like, Snorlax and his baby form, or you could have something that's like Hitmontop, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee. You can have Eevee and the Eeveelutions, etc., right? So like, those make sense to have in box sets. It makes sense to have some Pokemon that are known for a specific gimmick in box sets. Like, how cool would it be, because we never got Magneton from Mega Construx, but it'd be easy enough to purchase 3 of these and then modify it to build your own. But how cool would it be if this came with a little piece inside of it that is a magnet, and then you could just snap 3 of them together on your own? So now you can have a box that has 3 Magnemites in it, and they're magnetic, and they snap together to become a Magneton. Like, that would be cool. I like that idea. Obviously, it doesn't work so well for Magnezone, because then that one gets all stretched out and weird. But yeah. The other issue that I have with Mega Construx handling of the Pokemon as well is many sets that didn't scale terribly well. It makes sense for some sets. I mean, obviously, even in Pokemon in the actual canon, there are several Pokemon that get larger and smaller in size throughout. So it makes sense for that to be a thing. It also makes sense, once again, for very popular Pokemon like Pikachu to get a giant statue build, because, people will buy that if that's the thing they're interested in. If they don't like the small builds because maybe they think they're too childish, or they'll get lost, or they're just disposable, whatever the case may be, right? Going out of your way then to try and pick up a larger build of your favorite Pokemon, that just makes sense. I completely understand that. But it is fascinating. I mean, you've got an Evolution build set, I guess, right here. Is this not just... Oh, it's so hard to see because it's so low. Anyway, it's fine. But yeah, generally speaking, it's baffling to me how many Pokemon from Gen 1 that were missing, entirely because Lego just kind of... I keep doing that. Mega Construx kind of went out of their way to kind of shoot themselves in the feet over and over and over again. Like, look at this. 2023, Charmander. Why? I don't understand. You got Pichu here, you got Pichu here. And many times, too, it's worth noting, you got Pichu... Stop. All right. Anyway, you get my point here. And when I talked very briefly about some suspicious pieces, these types of pieces are what I was referring to, because this piece right here is a relatively specialized shape. It's simple in its shape, right? Smooth, but it's got some structure, some sculpting to it that makes it especially useful for a head and not a lot else. You can absolutely use something like this head for just like rocky texture, because you can have smooth rocks or whatever, absolutely. But to have something like this molded from Lego, to have something like the nose piece here on Mario, a very weird piece, especially given how it's structured. If you've never seen the actual piece itself, I would highly recommend checking out, and just generally checking out anyway, New Elementary, either on their website, but also on like Instagram and elsewhere, because they have a lot of the latest news on a lot of sets, as well as actual parts that come in several of those sets as well. So you get to be sometimes the first to learn about new parts and how they connect and the really interesting ways that they fit into the Lego system. It's a wonderful resource. I'm not sponsored, but you get my point, right? I mean, it's free, so I don't imagine anybody's sponsored. You get the point, though. So generally speaking, you know, having sets like this in hand, they can scratch a little itch. They can dose out the dopamine or whatever for a little while. Absolutely. And I think they are fun to collect. They're small enough that you can just put them in a drawer and forget about them when you're not worried about, you know, trying to see them. My exposure is terrible on this camera right now, generally speaking, though. It's a fun theme, and it took a very long time for Lego to get their hands on it, honestly, and I'm just wondering if that's going to end up ultimately harming the theme more, if that makes sense, right? Because I have to imagine, I could be completely wrong on this, I am entirely speculating, but I'm speculating with good cause here, because I have to imagine that Generation 1 Pokemon is probably to this day still the most popular. And when I say Generation 1, I mean the Pokemon themselves, the characters themselves. I don't mean the games, I don't mean the cards necessarily, anything like that, but I have to feel like these Pokemon, by virtue of being the oldest, the most nostalgic, the first, the ones who have been on shelves the longest, they're the ones that most people are going to resonate with. Not all, absolutely not. Many people probably got into Pokemon later on in its lifetime, but Pokemon was a worldwide phenomenon in Generation 1 for a reason. It was new and there was nothing really like it, but you can easily become an imitation of yourself with every new release, new generation, new gimmick you try to introduce. Nothing wrong with gimmicks, clearly. But you've got to handle it right. You've got to do it right. I do trust Lego to do that, but I don't know where it's going to stop, and I don't know where it's going to start, where its scope is. There are so many Pokemon in the Pokemon world today, like over 700, I think, maybe even more than that. Honestly, it's been forever since I've looked, and I don't think anybody could make them all, not aside from like Pokemon themselves. If Pokemon the brand got into making bricks, sure, they could do it, but any larger brand responsible for catering to not just one theme but multiple themes, dozens even, it's near impossible to expect that to come from any brand. The logistics alone would make that nearly impossible. The customer service for missing parts would be a nightmare, especially if there's no differentiation between the packaging. Absolutely wild to think that something like this could exist. And I am happy for it, but I am hesitant for it. Is there a way Lego can do it wrong? Yeah, of course. Is it going to make me upset if they do? No, I don't think so. I do really think that what Mega Construx did, for the most part, not every set was a beacon, you know, but much of what Mega Construx was able to do with the limited parts that they had and the very specialized mold that they were able to get away with by virtue of not being Lego, right? They gave us a lot to love out of these sets, but they didn't go as far as they should have. And that's my biggest gripe with them, is that there were 151 Pokemon, and I do not expect you to produce them all in 1 year, right? No one should. But in 7 years? By that point, given, and you could go to the website yourself and count each individual Pokemon that they made. I have to guarantee it's over 150, right? Yes, you sprinkle in the starters and some other iconic Pokemon from later in its history, absolutely. We didn't even see, unless I missed them, the legendary birds from Generation 1. It's possible I missed them. There were obviously some sets that were canceled in the past from them as well, so maybe, you know. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough on this one. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe. Once again, you can obviously check these sets out. I believe several of them are probably still for sale, even in stores, but if not in stores, you can obviously find many of them online. I could not tell you the price on any of them these days. I really have no idea if they've inflated, deflated, or whatever. But generally speaking, some of them I think are definitely worth having. The Scyther is a phenomenal build. I had a Shelder once, which has this little rubber tongue thing, and it was so fun to just play with. It's little things sometimes, right? You get something that's just got a rubbery bit and you want to just mess around with it forever. It's a fidget toy, right? But yeah, other than that, you can always subscribe if I didn't say that already, and check out my links down in the description. I will see you all in the next one. Take care.